Okay. Hi Catherine, thank you very much for agreeing to see me. Just a few quick questions about the teaching review scheme. The current system in place came into effect in 2016. There was a change from the previous teaching review scheme. Do you know if that, or have you noticed any changes that the changes brought in? So I can't even form a sentence now.
Beyond the differences I think in the paperwork and how we submitted the reports, I wasn't particularly aware of anything.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. What do you? Are there elements of the scheme that we should keep? Elements, and conversely, elements that you think we should possibly consider not doing anymore?
I feel very strongly that as a head of department, I would like to review my own staff.
Right.
I feel that it's a wasted opportunity to go and see, yes, obviously there's the sort of the pedagogy, and there's always a sort of takeaway from any session that you go into, but we tend to then in this faculty pair up with people that are often in the skills lab doing something very specific to nursing, and whilst I can appreciate what's going on, I sometimes feel as though I've always got to be very cautious in the feedback that I give, because I don't fully understand the context.
Sure.
As a head of department, I think it's absolutely vital that I know what's going on in my classrooms, and I get to see my own staff teach regularly. I do that anyway, but I think that this would be a more constructive process if we could do it formally through the teaching review and then revisit through appraisal.
So that make you the sole reviewer of your department?
Yes, or I'd be happy for myself and a deputy to do it, right, or something like that. But I think I know, for example, there was somebody in my team a couple of years ago who needed a lot of extra help, and we extended that person's probation period in order to give them the extra help. But then somebody from a completely different department reviewed that person's teaching, gave a very benign sort of kind of critique of it, and I'm not sure it added anything or sure, contributed in any way.
So is there a direct line then between teaching review and appraisal and CPD?
My understanding is that there is a target set for everybody at their teaching review, mm-hmm, and the target then forms one of your targets in the appraisal.
Right. Is
that right?
You're the first person that said that.
Okay.
So I'm pleased to hear that, because that was one of the things I think that was brought in the 2016 change, which was that there should be a direct line, so that if because it's not always the case, but if a developmental need is recognised at teaching review, then that becomes a learning and teaching developmental need at appraisal, and then appropriate CPD is sourced.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we're keen for that to happen across the board is because we come up with CPD and we deliver CPD, but what CMT would like us to do would be to find out the range of CPD that staff actually want, and then deliver that for them, rather than so we can actually provide what's required, rather than trying to guess what people need. So that direct line would be helpful. It's the same with HR as well, for the CPD that they deliver. So if that's happening, that's absolutely brilliant. Is there anything else then that because that was going to be my last week. It's going to be a very short interview probably. Is there anything? Tell me anything that you want to say about the teaching review scheme.
I suppose the other thing to say is I think giving feedback it is quite an intimate thing to do, and I know that when I go in and see my own teaching staff teach, that I approach feedback in lots of different ways depending on their personality and their experience, and I feel quite disarmed when I'm doing a teaching review on Thursday for somebody that I've never met.
Right.
And I don't know, I don't know whether that person responds well to criticism, really wants it, that there is something that they want help with, and so I just feel as though I think I was keen to do this interview because I've felt for quite a long time that we're missing a trick,
right.
and I think we ought to be looking at into our own with our own staff. Yeah, there's a workload implication for that, but say if I share it with a deputy, rather than doing six people who teach on midwifery,
Sure.
why not do 6 people that I'm responsible for their module evaluations and their probation reports and their appraisal and so on, and it's
interesting point. There are people who are. I'm not precious about anything. Every feedback, every criticism is an opportunity for me to reflect and look for opportunities to grow. But I do know we have colleagues that don't necessarily see the world in the same way. Do you think that the reviewers, sometimes reviewers, you said about you had somebody who was having difficulties and they had a benign review? Is that part of? Why do you think that is? Let me say that.
I think because I think I think many of us are cautious when we're reviewing something that we don't necessarily know, and I think we're cautious when we're reviewing somebody we don't particularly know, and I know also as a head of department doing appraisals, I then will pick up a target that somebody's had. And sometimes I think, well, what does this mean? And it may have just be some one-liner, and it's devoid of context or anything else, and I'm relying on then the appraisee to be able to help me with that.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, I've spent a lifetime in schools, and I've been used to sort of professional development and appraisal through the schools process, and to me it lacks the sort of the meaning. I think it's just a missed opportunity.
Sure, we missed that rigour, I guess.
I think so.
And a sense of tied up, but joined up bit. So
And I
for
think
you, that is there in a sense.
Say again.
There is a link between
Yes.
teaching review and appraisal.
Yeah, and I think as well, I spend some time with somebody and we work. I'll give the feedback and then I walk away, and there's no need for me to be invested in that in the same way I am invested in helping one of my own staff.
Sure.
And I've got that continuity, and the teaching review is a snapshot. There's no follow up the next year with the same person necessarily. It all just I just think that there would be a way of really working closely with your own staff on this, and using other data around things like the MES scores, all the different student feedback mechanisms that we've got.
Sure.
And then being able to follow up with that person and go and have a look at what they're doing in their classroom, and why don't you sit with that person, and those sorts of things don't happen, and I think that's a shame.
Okay. Wow. I have no further questions. I was essentially the top and tail of the questions I have are: did the 2016 change make a difference? And the other one was: is there a direct link between teaching review and in between? It's I believe what's called a KISS evaluation: keep, improve, stop, and start. And I think you've pretty much covered all of that, and,
Okay.
which is brilliant. I'm not complaining, but and so if there's anything to add, great. If not,
Sure.
I'll let you go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Painless.
It was indeed. Thank
Cheers.
you.